All right, hello and welcome to our Q2 2023 quarterly product update. We say Q2 as we always focus on the past quarter first in these sessions, and we're so excited to have all of you here, and there's so much in store today for us to share. I'm Sonia Blanks, the Director of Product Marketing here at Nucleus Security, and I'm joined by Rob Gibson, our Director of Product for this session. Hey Rob, how's it going?
It's going great. I'm excited to be here and excited to share some news with everybody.
Perfect. And if you're part of our audience today, feel free to drop us a message or an emoji in the chat and just let us know you're here. Welcome. So why are we here? We provide these quarterly updates to give you, both existing and future customers, a look inside some of the things happening with our product a few times a year. We also like to give anyone unaware of Nucleus Security and why we do Vulns Good a quick intro into who we are and what we do. So by Vulns, we mean vulnerabilities, and by good, we mean significantly better than what you're doing now. And so we'll look at the agenda slide first. Our agenda is typically the same for these sessions. We start with a quick Nucleus intro, then dive into today's agenda, which includes the latest releases, our upcoming roadmap, and other events, plus a dedicated time for Q&A. And so for anyone that might be new here, Nucleus is a vulnerability management innovation leader just getting started. We're recognized as an industry leader for risk-based vulnerability management and transform vulnerability management within large, complex environments by enabling risk-based, intelligence-led decisions at scale. We empower teams to work fast and focused with smart automation that simplifies and immediately expedites the vulnerability management process, no matter where teams are today, moving them to a higher level of efficiency, performance, speed, and effectiveness rapidly. With Nucleus, you clearly understand what needs to be fixed, why it needs to be fixed, where it needs to be fixed, and who needs to fix it. So you can officially break up with the more legacy or traditional ways of managing vulnerabilities that aren't working. And lastly, we seamlessly integrate with existing tools and systems to unify processes, data, and people quickly, which allows our customers to pivot to an Intel-led risk-based vulnerability management approach with the latest vulnerability data at their fingertips rapidly, which they can then turn around and operationalize and act on immediately. Feel free to visit our website at nucleussec.com to request a personalized demo or connect with myself or Rob for more information on LinkedIn. And with that, I will pass the baton to Rob to start diving into some of our most recent releases and all the exciting things coming in from product. Rob.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sonia. I'm happy to share these updates with everybody today and answer any questions that you may have. This is a refresher of the strategic priorities that Nucleus has been pursuing throughout the year, and it's going to kind of govern how this presentation is organized. So I'll just talk through it a little bit. This is kind of how we're thinking of the main areas of product focus that we have at the moment. We kind of think of there being several value streams to Nucleus that our customers benefit from. The first is our data processing. This refers to anything having to do with how you get your data into Nucleus in a seamless, quick, reliable fashion. And our objective here is to continue adding and enhancing our roster of native connectors that we have, integrations with security vendors and security scanning tools and things of that nature, to get that data into Nucleus so that you can have the visibility into all of the security data that you want to have on the platform. The second area is about platform experience. We have a lot of exciting updates to share there today. And this is about how you manage your data once it's onto Nucleus, how you make Nucleus work for your organization, all of the things you want to do to manage and view and share your data at scale. And then the third item is about remediation enablement. This is about how you close the loop on vulnerability management. Sonia shared a helpful chart a few moments ago showing kind of the flow through which vulnerability management process goes. And when you have identified your relevant vulnerabilities, and when you've prioritized them and communicated them out to a team for remediation, that's what the remediation enablement portion has to do. This has to do with our integrations with external ticketing programs. It has to do with our reporting and analysis capabilities that we have. And so we'll share some updates in that area today. Our objective is to make it as easy as possible for VM teams, which are often small, lean and mean teams within any security organization, to communicate out to many dozens or even hundreds of folks throughout an organization who are actually doing the patching and remediation of vulnerabilities. So we will share updates in each of these three areas subsequently. So let's talk about data processing. I have a couple of high-level items to share. The big standouts here are updates to our Sneak connector and our Veracode connector. And these are really foundational improvements if you're using either of these two connectors, or if you might have interest in using them. This is big news for you to know. The first is, when it comes to Sneak, a new import method that really kind of revolutionizes the way that we bring Sneak data onto the Nucleus platform. We can now ingest by org. We also treat assets differently from the Sneak connector versus how we used to. So prior to this update, you could bring in all or by project from Sneak. So we're kind of missing that middle layer. The hierarchy in Sneak has organizations which have projects. So for large organizations, bringing in by project is impractical. There's too many individual granular things, and bringing in all of the data at once can be a little bit messy and doesn't allow for kind of the specific selection of data that our customers want to have. So we now have the ability to ingest by org, and assets from Sneak are treated differently than they were in the past. So this leads to more efficient scheduling, and it also makes it much easier for large organizations to handle data coming from Sneak. So real revolutionary improvement to the Sneak connector. And obviously it's a very popular tool that many of our customers have a relationship with. And so we're happy to be able to support that in a new way in this manner. So if you're interested in that capability, contacting your account team is probably the best first step to getting data in this new method. The second item I'll mention here is about Veracode and bringing in sandbox data from that tool. So Veracode has the concept of application scans, and it also has the concept of sandboxes. And sandboxes are places where within organizations, customers can upload sort of pre-production code assets so that they can do the scanning and reviewing of security data on those assets before they ship them, avoids affecting their compliance stance, and it also allows them to catch things before they get shipped to production. Many customers want to bring that information into Nucleus because of the kind of workflow management tools that we have. They want to have that overall visibility of both production and non-production security vulnerabilities. So we can now support this. We now import sandbox scans, importing those from Veracode. And what it allows you to do is set each of those sandboxes as a branch of an application scan. So these are new assets in Nucleus, but they do not add to your asset count for licensing purposes. It's just an additional dimension to your existing assets that you're already paying for if you're using the Veracode connector or have intention to do so. So excited to offer that. And also this is an opt-in, or this is a beta capability available to all customers. So if you have the Veracode connector set up, you should be able to see the import by, or the include sandboxes functionality on both the scan ingestion screen and on the schedule scan ingestion screens. And we'll move on to the next slide here, where we show just the sheer number of connector updates that we've made throughout the quarter. We don't have time to go through all of them, but this is even just a subset of the logos of the various vendors that we connect with and that we've made updates to this quarter. So we're constantly trying to add additional metadata from these connectors to give you more control over how you're ingesting the data, how you want it to be represented in your Nucleus instance. And we're also always improving the speed and performance of our ingests from these connectors so you can bring more data on and do it more quickly and efficiently. So we will be continuing to make updates in this area. And later on in the presentation, when I talk about the roadmap for Q3, we have an additional connector updates that we can share. So let's move into the second area, platform experience, where we have a number of exciting changes to talk about. The first, and probably most prominent here, is about the trends page. We've added a new chart and a new table to the trends page. We made some announcements about this throughout the quarter, and you may have seen them. But in case you didn't, the chart in the middle of this page, it's highlighted with the pink box, is the average vulnerability lifetime. Previously, we counted the average vulnerability lifetime of remediated vulnerabilities, and we've now added, in addition to that, the average lifetime for active vulnerabilities, as well as a combined average lifetime that combines both active and remediated. So what this allows our customers to do is to have a really powerful tracking metric for seeing the performance and effectiveness of their vulnerability management programs over time. basically you can see by severity, by asset group, by vulnerability type, by all the different filtering mechanisms that are available on the trends page, you can see how well your teams are doing at remediating vulnerabilities, either in compliance with your SLAs or in compliance with any other sort of timelines that you have in mind for how quickly those should get remediated. You can zoom in on problem areas by looking at areas where vulns might be lingering for too long. So this allows you to take a more effective stance at vulnerability management and be able to hold teams accountable within your organization that might need to be held accountable for moving a little more quickly on things, or who need additional support and more resources to patch vulnerabilities as needed. So this was released in late May, and our customers have so far communicated some really positive feedback about it, and we hope that you find it very useful. I have some more trends page updates that we can talk about in the roadmap section. There are 3 additional items here in platform experience that were released this quarter. The first 2 on the left side here have to do with the representation of container image data from the Prisma Cloud connector. There are 2 items that I'll highlight, and let me know if you have any questions. The first has to do with the maintenance of status between vulnerabilities within the same container image repository found on different versions of a container image. So basically what happens with container images is they're being refreshed repeatedly. Most of the time they're being refreshed on a daily or weekly basis, right? And so the images are imported as assets into Nucleus, and they can have fresh active status when they are imported. So if a customer has someone actively working on remediating a vulnerability on one version of a container image, if a new version of the same exact image from the same repository comes in and has the same vulnerabilities, we want to make sure that those are linked up so it's clear that they're working on the same thing. So we now have the ability to say between different vulnerabilities on the same within the same container image repository on the same container images and different versions of it, they will be tracked and they will be maintained. So if you want to see more about that, view our documentation about the matter. It explains it in greater detail. It's a little easier to understand probably than what I just said. So have a look at that. It's very useful if you're using the Prisma Cloud connector to do vulnerability management of container images. There's also a base image analysis item there that's listed. So vulnerabilities can be introduced either from a base container image, so sort of the image that's approved by an IT organization or kind of set up as the base, or the current image, so one of the later versions that's had software changes or configuration changes made to it. And so we have that data from Prisma Cloud, and we've now made it easy to find and reference in the product UI. You can see the screenshot there showing whether a vulnerability was introduced from the base image or from a current image. What this allows you to do is to be able to assign the vulnerability to either, let's say, an IT organization if it's from the base image, or to a dev organization if it's from the current image, right? So just allows you more control and flexibility over how you route the ownership of those vulnerabilities. And again, part of just making container image vulnerability management easier and more practical within our data model. The other 2 items, I'll just kind of go through rather quickly. We have a new bulk update API endpoint for teams within Nucleus. So Nucleus, we have the concept of teams. There are a lot of management capabilities for those already, including single sign-on mapping. So you can bring in an SSO object from, let's say, Active Directory or something of that nature, map it to a team so that members, when they log into Nucleus, are automatically placed on this team. We now have additional bulk API management capabilities, so you can add and remove members from a team. You can add, change email addresses for members on teams and things of that nature. And that's all available in this bulk fashion with the API now. So any size organization should have a very easy time managing their teams in Nucleus. And when it comes to the final item here, the risk score range and automation describes a range operator for risk score in finding processing rules that did not exist before. So now you can say, if a risk score is between such and such numbers, assign it a different severity, or change assignment to a different team, or any of the other actions you can take with finding processing based on this range. So a small change there, but a powerful one for teams setting up automation to manage many different kinds of vulnerabilities coming in. So a lot of great changes in the platform experience area. And again, happy to chat through some more of them in the roadmap section of the presentation, or if anybody has any questions. I'll move on to remediation enablement now. And there's one big update here that we're very happy to share, and it has to do with dynamic ticketing assignment in Jira. So if you use our Jira connector to assign external tickets from your vulnerabilities in Nucleus, you might already be aware that when you create a rule to say, under these conditions, create a ticket, if there are things like many different assignees for the vulnerability instances of a unique vulnerability, you previously would have had to make a specific rule for each of these individual assignees in order to route the tickets effectively. So, for example, let's say you have one CVE and there are 10 instances of that vulnerability in your environment, and each of those 10 instances is assigned to a different person for remediation. In the past, you would have had to make 10 separate rules to say, if this CVE and this assignee create this ticket assigned to this person. Now what you can do is you can dynamically set that. So the change, if you'll just advance the slide there, Sonia, is we can create one rule with conditions that will dynamically set the assignee for all of the instances for unique vulnerability. So back to that case that I just kind of mentioned, that hypothetical, if you have the CVE, you could say the conditions of the rule are if this CVE set the assignee dynamically. And so now the Nucleus rule engine will create 10 separate tickets for each of those 10 individual assignees. So it's a very powerful feature. In some cases, customers' environments would require hundreds of rules, now down to tens or even fewer. Right, so it's just a big update that allows for simplification of rule automation. Like I said before, this is currently for Jira only, but ServiceNow is coming soon. I'll talk some more about that in the roadmap section. And this is an opt-in feature. So if you're interested, please do let your account team know. It's currently opt-in with plans to make it a default feature of Nucleus in the not too distant future.
Hey, Rob. Before we move on to the next section, I thought it might be useful to talk about a couple of these updates a little more in detail. And so you were just on dynamic ticketing. What other use cases, can you see or do you know of that would relate to dynamic ticketing?
Yeah, so it's a great question. The primary, there are kind of two areas that customers are especially interested in us making progress in that area. The first is, in addition to individual assignment routing, like I was just describing, team assignment routing. So for many organizations, they're assigning vulnerabilities to teams rather than individuals. And so that's something that we have planned in the roadmap for implementation, basically to say in a similar way, if you have all of these different instances and they're all assigned to different teams, create the tickets by team. And so that the routing, again, is more simplified between the conditions that create the rule, that create the ticket, and the people who receive it. So that's one. The other is for the contents of the ticket themselves. So the contents of the ticket can change depending on who's receiving it. It can change depending on, or I should say the desired contents of a ticket can change depending on who's receiving it, or what the vulnerability is, or what the suggested remediation is. So right now we have sort of default contents to tickets when they're created, with some minimal ability to customize in a static way. So again, like you can specify, well, this should be of priority medium, and it should be a ticket type subtask, and it should have these labels, right? There are all these kind of specific things you can do to customize the ticket, but it's always the same, right? It's a static one-to-one relationship between rule and contents. So the idea is to make that more dynamic and basically have dynamic templates within the ticketing interface. So if you can imagine the future, it's sort of a low-code, no-code ticketing language where you can specify exactly programmatically how you want your tickets to be represented. based on inputs from Nucleus and from your external systems. And we're making steps to move in that direction, initially with these solving these routing problems. And then the following item will be for these template issues. And that's in both Jira and ServiceNow. So excited to make progress on it over time.
Yeah, that's awesome. I can only imagine how exciting that would be for any of, especially the largest customers, right? That are creating hundreds of these tickets prior to this going out. And then the second thing I wanted to ask you about before we go into the next section is with the trends page. You know, trends page has come up a lot. Our last session, we talked about trends page. We've been talking about it in the Nucleus product update quite a bit. And so in relation to the trends page, what additional reporting are customers asking for? You know, where do you see things going with the trends page? Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So we view the trends page as a customer's best place to go to figure out, how is my VM program performing at a high level? So from kind of an executive level, our customers want to know how they're doing at vulnerability management, how they're making good use of the Nucleus product and all the services that it offers. The trends page should be their destination for that information. So our intention is to continue adding ways to view their data that help answer those types of questions, these kind of high-level questions about performance, and the ability to kind of filter that down by team and some kind of basic filters like vulnerability type and asset group and things of that nature. So in the short to medium term, we'll be adding capabilities like the ability to see how you're doing at risk score performance over time. Right now, we represent risk score in many different ways in the Nucleus product, but showing kind of a time-based view of how your risk score was 30 days ago versus now, and seeing kind of a trend line for that is something that we don't have, but we'll be adding that into the trends page. That's kind of one area of reporting and analysis that our customers want to see. Another area that they want to be able to have is more customizable ability to break down their data in any way they see fit. Obviously, you can imagine with the size and variety of customers that Nucleus has, we have a lot of different sort of use cases for how customers want to break down their data, how they want to evaluate the performance of their programs. We want to see, where most of their vulnerabilities are, and use that to allocate resources in a strategic fashion throughout their organization to do VM better. In order to do some of this more granular reporting, our suggestion to our customers is to use the Nucleus data in external data reporting tools like Power BI tools. And we have a lot of capabilities today to export that data easily for customers, including our Amazon S3 connector, which can allow you to get your data out of Nucleus directly into an S3 bucket. And I've seen customers use that data to set up amazing dashboards on their own. And our goal is to bring that information into the product over time as well. And so we have a lot of that already today, and we'll be bringing more of it in over time as well. So that's probably the long-winded answer to your question, Sonia.
No, that was great. That was great. Just a quick reminder to everyone, the chat is open, so feel free to drop us questions or thoughts or feedback to any of this. And even if we can't get to the question immediately, we will save it for Q&A, or we may even respond to you after this session. And so with that, I think we're ready for the next section, Rob.
Let's do it. Okay, and this is one more reminder in addition to the others that were sent out throughout the previous quarter and that we've mentioned in previous customer webinars, that Asset Group Access Control is now GA as of June 28th. What is Asset Group Access Control? If you don't know, it's a new capability within Nucleus that is basically an RBAC functionality that allows you to assign only specific asset groups to users within your organization. So you can now say something like, Sonia should only have access to assets of this type. So I'm going to restrict her to that type of asset, and Rob should only have access to these other 3 asset types, right? The benefit to this is twofold. First and foremost is sort of a least privileged access kind of feature where, basically, maybe the infra team doesn't need to know about the application vulnerabilities that your organization has, right? So kind of keeping information about where your organization is vulnerable to a need-to-know basis. It also kind of declutters the interface for Nucleus for many of the users who only need to know about certain types of things. It makes their job easier to kind find the relevant data to them and act upon it, takes out the noise from their perspective. The other capability that has gone into this, and this is now the default behavior within all of Nucleus, is dynamic asset group management. So previously, if you added an asset to an asset group in Nucleus, it would remain in that asset group indefinitely until you removed it. Many of our customers reported that this was kind of insufficient for managing assets and asset groups at scale. When things change all the time, you can't necessarily keep tabs on what group an asset's supposed to be in a sort of a manual fashion, right? So this allows our customers to have automation rules that assign assets to groups under certain conditions. And so now when an asset no longer meets those conditions, it will be removed from the group automatically. This is important for asset group access control because you want to make sure that the asset group you've assigned Sonia or Rob to is the right asset group and has the right information within it. And it's also just a better way of managing assets, even if you're not using the access control features directly. So big changes, and that's why we made a lot of announcements about them throughout the previous quarter. If you're interested in learning more, you can talk to your support or your account team, but this is now default behavior available to all of our customers. So let's talk about the roadmap. I like to show a retro in these webinars because I want customers to have faith and confidence that when they see the future-looking roadmap, the items that they see represented on there are going to be items that we try our best to deliver on in the timeframes that we specify. This is the Q2 roadmap that I shared in the last quarterly product webinar that we had. And you can see we did an okay job getting most of these items done. I think it's not perfect, and it's, we'll always strive for perfection. But I think if you're in the software development business, you know that in agile development shop, roadmaps are not always completed to 100%. So we're going to keep striving for that. But I'll show you kind of the ways in which some of these items have completed and others have kind of moved on. So we've talked about, I think, all of these in this webinar: the container-based image visibility, the Veracode connector enhancements, so it's the sandboxes, the new trends page items. Asset group access control V2 is taking longer than we anticipated at the beginning of the quarter. So we focused on getting V1 generally available, and V2 is going to be represented on the Q3 roadmap, and we have pretty high confidence that we're going to be able to get V2 out by the end of Q3. The ticketing enhancements item I spoke about at length, and the connector enhancements below here, that was always kind of intended as a Q3 item. That's why it was talked about as a mid-2023 item. So we did make some progress getting started on these connectors, and we haven't completed them yet, but I'll talk about that more when I talk about the Q3 roadmap on the next slide. So there are a number of items, and I'll talk through the list and try to make this interesting. Roadmaps are always, just a list of tons of stuff. So please do, utilize the chat if you have questions or feedback. The first item here is about running containers asset prototype. Many of our customers, as I kind of mentioned when I was talking about container images with the Prisma Cloud connector, would love to be able to use Nucleus more effectively to better understand where they're vulnerable on their running container instances. So the challenges of doing vulnerability management on container images versus on running container instances are different. And we have some prototyping that we're doing right now to change the way that we represent some of this information and make it available to customers so that they can use Nucleus in conjunction with some of the tools that are available on the market to help customers assess their vulnerabilities in these items. So that's the first item. The second item is the ticketing enhancements to the ServiceNow connector. This would be trying to replicate some of the behavior that we did with Jira. And, I've already spoken to that at length, so I'll kind of leave it there for this slide. The third item is about bulk Nucleus data exports via API. So when I was talking about reporting, I did talk about our AWS S3 connector that allows you to get your data out of Nucleus in bulk. This is working great today for many of our customers. However, there are several customers who, for whatever reasons, whether it's internal company policy or reasons of cost or whatever, don't want to use AWS S3. And so they want to have a different way to get their data out of Nucleus in bulk. We're going to provide a generic API endpoint that you can query it kicks off a job in Nucleus that'll allow you to then download your data in this bulk fashion. So there should be a more generic way to accomplish this use case for all customers. The fourth item is the Asset Group Access Control V2, which I spoke to on the previous slide. The fifth item, Trends Page enhancements. This has to do with the additional Trends Page items that I mentioned to Sonia's previous question about additional trends data. So this has to do with the risk score over time and also viewing some of the average age metrics in a more time-based fashion. So look out for new improvements there. We're excited to share those. And then the two connector items at the bottom, we do expect to have an MVP of a Lacework connector available with Nucleus by the end of the quarter. And we also expect to begin working on a Wiz connector, although we don't expect to finish that in Q3. But we may seek customer feedback. So if you're a customer that is using Wiz and wants to import Wiz data into Nucleus, do let us know. We would be happy to speak with you. And we have a number of customers who we're already aware of that are trying to accomplish these use cases that we're talking to as we design that connector. So that is it for the roadmap. And again, happy to take any questions you have, but I'll let Sonia speak to some of these items about communications.
Yep, just really quick, this will not take long, then we'll dive straight into Q&A, but just a reminder on all the different communications that you may see coming to you that you can consume and review to really help yourself stay aware of everything that's happening. And so we have a Nucleus product update that comes every month. The next one will actually be going out tomorrow, and just about everything we talked about here will have more details there, as well as links directly to some of the documentation that Rob mentioned as well. And then the second type of notification you may get from us is a Nucleus notification, which typically we only send those as needed if we have something that comes up that may change your actual platform experience or may require action on your part. And so those are going to come from time to time, depending on what kind of updates we're rolling out. In addition to that, we've started creating these release spotlight blogs, which really highlight specific releases that are coming out and use cases as far as where these apply, how they apply, in very friendly language so that you can really understand the value and really what we're delivering. And so the most recent one that we have for this is the Asset Group Access Control. And then we also have one just before that about the Trends Page updates that we recently did. And then there's also a series of printables that we've been producing recently. So we just updated our Nucleus overview data sheet. And then we also have a new case study, which is really great if you just want to see how Mandiant and Nucleus work together, not only within their organization as a strategic partner, but also with their customers. And then Rob mentioned a couple of times that we have documentation as it relates to our product. And so most of that can be found in the Nucleus Support Center or documentation area. And so you can go there if you need to understand, especially on the technical end, how things work, how you can make them get up and running. So those are always available to you, which you can also up and down vote. And you can also get in contact with our team if you have specific questions to that. In addition to that, we've also been doing monthly webinars that are typically very thought leadership oriented, really here to bring in some strategic industry leading experts to talk about vulnerability management and just the space and security that we're in. And so the next upcoming one is on August 1st, which will feature our VP of Marketing, Patrick Garrity, and then also Aaron Joe from the Mandiant team, which will definitely bring a very interesting perspective to these conversations. And so you can register for this on the landing page, and you can always find links to these, especially the on-demand versions afterwards on our website in the webinars and videos areas. And so here's an example of 2 webinars that you can access now that were happening in the last 2 months. And so those are on demand and available at this time on our website if you'd like to go and consume them. Also, again, with other industry leaders that we've had. And so with that, that wraps up my portion. I will open up the floor in case anyone has questions for either of us or just, about anything that we brought up. Okay, Rob, I will throw one at you in case any others come up from this, but the one I will throw at you is with containers. You brought up containers quite a bit, and we're doing quite a bit to help address some of the work there. But are there additional challenges or issues that you've seen or that you're hearing about that customers are running into, and that maybe either A, we're trying to build something for or help with, or just in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the biggest thing when it comes to containers for our customers, and this is a thing that there's a lot of movement in the market currently trying to help address some of these issues, is the difference between vulnerability management on container images and running containers. And once a container is running actually in production, it all of a sudden opens it up to all sorts of different security issues that might not be apparent on a container image. And some of these are kind of configuration or compliance issues having to do with changes that might be made to the container while it's running, right? So how you represent those and kind of keep tabs on that data as it's changing in real time, and try to lock down those either configuration vulnerabilities or other types of cloud vulnerabilities is a big and interesting problem in security today. So having a better way to represent that in Nucleus is a big objective of ours. And you saw in the roadmap that we're going to be trying to deliver more on that. So if you are a customer watching this webinar and you have that issue today, if you have containers in your environment and you're figuring out the right way to do VM with those containers, please talk to us. We'd love to hear your thoughts, and we'd love to help work with you on solutions for that.
Awesome. I haven't seen any new questions pop up, Rob, so I don't know, maybe we just covered everything today. But for everyone that's here, oh, we have one right here. It says we are a new Nucleus user. We just started ingesting data. Is there a best practice flow of the order that things should be configured?
I might need a little more kind of clarification on the question, but I think in terms of best practice, I'd say starting with setting up any connectors that you may have so that you can see the data coming in, and then kind of taking a look at the rules as they're represented in our automation interface in the order that you want to configure them. So as the data is ingested, we have a number of steps that we take, and those are represented in order in the automation interface. You can see asset processing and finding processing and ticketing and automation and asset removal. So kind of taking those as a step-by-step approach in that order probably makes a lot of sense for a new customer. And of course, if you have any questions along the way, our support team is definitely here and ready to help. But thank you for being a customer. We're excited to have you on board.
Yes, most definitely. And then we have one more as well. It says users get notified via email when a vulnerability is assigned to their user. They do not currently get email notifications if it's assigned to the team. Is there any thoughts of enabling email notifications for teams?
There are thoughts about that. There's kind of a number of notification capabilities that I think that we are lacking currently. And we want to have a kind of holistic approach to how we're doing notifications and the different ways that customers want to trigger those notifications and also to receive them. And that's something that we're taking a look at prioritizing in the fourth quarter of this year.
Awesome. Love these questions. If anyone else has any, we've still got a couple of minutes. Happy to answer. Okay, perfect. Well, with that, we thank everyone so much for being here. This is so funny. My colleague is using me and it's saying Sonia Blanks messages as I'm over here like this. But welcome for joining. Yeah, I know it's kind of funny, right? I have magic, everyone. But thank you for joining us. And you will have this recording on demand. So if your team wasn't able to make it, feel free to share it with them. We'll be emailing it to everyone that registered for this. And you can always access it on our webinars and videos page. And so anything else you want to add, Rob, before we close?
Nothing specific. Just wanted to say thank you, everybody, for coming today and allowing us to chat these through with you. And if you have any questions or comments or feedback for us, we always love to hear that. So thank you again, and we'll see you next time.
Yes, thank you so much. Everyone have a great rest of your week. Take care.